Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you. Today we're going to study simple present tense. There are many tenses in English language that we'll cover in the coming weeks throughout the semester. But for today we're going to talk about the most simple basic one, which is simple present tense as well as present continuous tense. So I believe back in school or in the previous semesters in UMK, you must have learned about simple present tense and present continuous tense, but today we are going to look into those tenses rather quickly. So as you can see here on the slide, on the screen, the present of be. So when we talk about be verbs, we are talking about the most basic verbs that we use in almost sentences that we talk in our daily life, which is, are, or am. If we are talking about past tense, we are talking about was or were. So as you can see here, I am from New York, or I am from Kelantan. Am is a type of be verb. He, she, it is from New York, so is a be verb. You, we, they are from New York, so are is a type of a be verb. When the subject is more than one, of course, we use are when we are using simple present tense. If the subject is singular, he, she, or it is a name of a person, we use is, and I, we use am. So we are talking about the be verbs of simple present tense. When we are using be verb, we can also make it short. So for example, when you say I am surprised, so you can say in writing you can put it as I apostrophe am surprised. So I'm surprised. So you make it short. So the same goes to is and are. For example, when you say, if you take a look at the second sentence here, Timothy is an amazing person. So you make it short, Timothy apostrophe as an amazing person. He is very intelligent, he apostrophe s. So that is short for he is. If you can see here, there are lists of words with the short version of the be verb. I'm, he's, she apostrophe s, she's, it apostrophe s, it's, you apostrophe r, you are, we apostrophe r, short for we are, they are, and Timothy is become Timothy's. However, you must not confuse when you say it is, it apostrophe s, it can mean it is, or it can also mean possessive, something that belongs to you, something that belongs to the subject. For example, it, if it refers to your cat, so if you say it apostrophe is, it could also mean possessive. It's food. So this is my cat. Its food is on the table, or its fur is yellow, for example. So normally when we have be verbs here, is, are, or am, when we're talking about present tense, we use them to describe, to talk about a location. For example, Haiti is southeast of Florida, or Kelantan is northeast of Malaysia. So you use is to describe a location. You can also use is or are to talk about a weather. For example, you say it is warm in Malaysia. I am hot because the weather is hot. So you are reacting to a weather. Place of origin. I am from Kelantan. So you say I am. You use the be verb to say your place of origin. I am 20 years old. So that is also be verb used to talk about your age. Your physical state, I am hungry or she is hungry. So is or am, they are all be verbs used to talk about your physical states. What is the time right now? Talking about time. So those are be verbs. Next, we have to be very careful when we use be verbs. Not all be verbs we can put apostrophe s. For example, just now we talked about she is. We say she apostrophe s, she's. But some words we don't put apostrophe s. For example, the word French here. French is one of Timothy's languages. You don't say French apostrophe s because in English language we also have exceptions. So some words we put apostrophe s when we want to make it short, but some other words we don't put apostrophe s or for example, words that end with s, se, ce, ge, ze, sh, ch, just like French, or x. For example, if you say box, the box is very big. So you don't say the box apostrophe s very big. The box is very big. So you don't say that because that is an exception. So can you think of other words that end with s, se, ce, ge, ze, or sh? The word language, for example, it ends with ge. So when you say the language is difficult, you don't say the language is difficult with apostrophe s when you put it in writing. So now let us move on to the simple present tense. So just now we talked about simple present tense, but the focus is the verb be, is, are, or am. But now let us take a look at a simple present tense with a different verb. When you have one person or the subject is singular, like I, like she, like he, the verb has to be if it is she or he or it, the verb normally you add an s with an exception. If you say I like English, so the verb is like. But if you say he like English, you have to say he likes English. So you have to put an s. So because verb, if the subject before the verb is singular, one, that means in the verb you have to add s or es. Unless it is an I. When you say I, the verb you don't have s, although I is one person. If the subject is more than one person, like we like English, in the verb you don't have s. So you can see the examples here. I like English, you know Mandarin, we come from China, the people of Iran speak Farsi. He speaks Farsi, so because he is one person, speak, you need to add an s. Timothy lives in New York, so because Timothy is one person, so that means live, you need to add an s. But if there are many people, Timothy and Sarah, for example, so you say Timothy and Sarah live in New York without an s. If it is past tense, so we say lived with a d in New York. He studies languages, so he is one person, so that is why study becomes studies. If there are two people, Jane and Sarah, study languages. So we don't say studies, but we say study languages. If it is a past tense, studied languages. So that is simple present tense. And you must not confuse simple present tense, the verb and the noun. So for example, when I put here, when I say there are 3 cars on the road, and my next sentence is he speaks English very well. So 3 cars. So I have an S here because there are 3 cars. I have an S here because he is one person. So you have to differentiate. If let's say car is a noun, so if it is a noun, the more than one, you have an S. If it is a verb, one singular, you have an S. So this is a verb. So because it is a verb, one person, you have S. More, you don't have S. But if it is a noun, more you have S, one you don't have S. So let's say you say there is 1 car on the road. But when you say they speak, you cannot say they speaks, but you say they speak English very well. So because he is one person, so you add an S because it is a verb. Speak is a verb. More than one, you don't have S. But if it is a noun, more you have S. One, you don't have S. So you must not confuse between verb and noun. So when we are talking about simple present tense, when we put in a question, so we say if you speak Farsi, so we say do you speak Farsi or do you speak English? He is handsome. When you put in a question, is he handsome? So the question is based on the possible statement. So you must not also confuse when you say he is handsome or she is pretty. But when you put in a question, how do you say? Do you say does he handsome or is he handsome? So which one do you say? So when is a verb here, when is a verb here, we would say is he handsome? So we use is. They are pretty. Are they pretty? I am handsome. Am I handsome? But if the statement is they live in Delhi, when you put in a question, are they live in Delhi or do they live in Delhi? So which one do you say? Are they live in Delhi or do they live in Delhi? So when the verb is a word like this, when the verb is a word like this, the question that you use would be, do they live in Chile? So if the verb is be verb like this, is, are, or am, so the question is he handsome, or are they handsome, or am I handsome? But they live in Chile, the question should be not are they in Chile. If the question is she lives in Chile, the question shouldn't be is she live in Chile, so that is wrong. So you say, does she live in Chile? So although you say she lives in Chile, but when you put in a question, you say, does she live in Chile? You don't put an S in live, because after do, after does, after did, the verb has to be in the base form. So when I say he cooks fried rice, so when I put in a question, does he cook? So I cannot say does he cooks, I say does he cook fried rice, because after do, after does, after did, the verb has to be in the base form. So that is about it. So you'll have to be careful when you form a question using simple present tense. So now let us, so when you ask a question, like does he study French? So the answer of course would be yes, he does. So you don't say is he study French, but if you say is he studying French, that is correct, because that is present continuous tense. So because study is not be verb, so the question starts with does. So now let us move on to the next part. Have and has. So the simple present tense of had is has or have. So if let's say you have one person, the person is singular or the object is singular, you use has. If more than one, you use have. But if it is an I, you use have as well. So when you put it in a question, like just now, when you put it in a question, she has a pretty face. When you put it in a question, does she has, you cannot say has, you say have, because the root word of has is have. So when you have do, does, or did, it is followed by have, not has, although she is one person. The same goes to the verb do and does. So for example, when you put it in a question, she does her homework fast. When you put it in a question, so you say will she do her homework fast? So although she does, but when you put it in a question, when you have will, when you have would, when you have me and might, can or could, or shall or should, the verb becomes the base form. So does becomes do. So those are the things that you need to pay attention to. So that is about simple present tense. So when do you use simple present tense? When do we use simple present tense? We use simple present tense when we are talking about factual information. For example, when you say um, the sun rises from the east. So you say the sun rises. You don't say the sun rose. You don't use past tense because that is a factual information. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So you say water boils. You don't say water boils. You don't use past tense. Or you don't say water is boiling at 100 degrees Celsius. So you use simple present tense because we are talking about factual information. We also use simple present tense when we are talking about something that is always true, a general truth. So if you can refer to the screen here, we use simple present tense to talk about general truth about yourself, about other people. For example, when you say, I like reading book. So you say I like. You don't say I liked, L-I-K-E-D, past tense. So I like reading book. So something that you like. So that is a truth about yourself. We also use simple present tense when we want to talk about habits or routines. For example, I wake up at 7 every morning. I wake up at 5 every morning. Or I drink coffee every morning. Or I go to class at 7 every morning. So you don't say I went to class every morning. You don't say I drank coffee every morning. You don't say I woke up at 7 every morning. So because it is a routine, a habit, you use simple present tense. Customs. So we also use simple present tense to talk about customs. So what kind of customs? Any customs. For example, Chinese people use red color during Chinese New Year. So you say use, you don't say used, past tense. So you use present tense. African people like colorful clothes. So use like instead of like, past tense. When do you use simple present tense? You can also use simple present tense when you talk about future action that will happen. For example, if let's say your parents are coming back from overseas and will arrive tomorrow, so you say my parents' flight arrives tomorrow at 7. So arrive is simple present tense. Although it happens tomorrow, but it is confirmed in the schedule. The flight will land tomorrow at 7. So you say arrives. You can also say will arrive. That is correct, but you can also use simple present tense because it is an action that will happen. So normally with simple present tense, we use always. We use every. For example, when you say, I drink coffee every morning. I always go to school at 7. I always watch movie in the evening. So you have the words like always, you have the words like every day, every week, or usually, or frequently, or sometimes. So these are the verbs, or these are the words that normally you have when you use simple present tense. So sometimes I go to school. You don't say sometimes I went to school. I generally add sugar in my drinks. So you don't say I generally added sugar. So you say I generally add sugar. So with simple present tense, you have some words that normally you have with simple present tense, like always, almost always, usually, generally, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, or even seldomly, or rarely, or every, or oftenly, or frequently, and sometimes. So that is about simple present tense. We'll meet again in the next lesson. Thank you.